Hi there. I'm Leslie Clary, your instructor, and as we're beginning our unit on poetry, our 2-week unit, I thought it might be helpful to give you a little bit of a supplemental lecture to go along to really enhance the written lectures that you have in the class and in your book. Poetry is usually the section that most students in Lit 100 are the most intimidated by and actually dread the most. And a big part of that is because they feel that they don't trust their perceptions, that don't trust their own interpretations. And so I hope that by the end of this 2 weeks that you feel more confident. And the other thing I should say is that even though this is sort of a challenging section, at the end often students send emails or leave comments that this turned out to be the most rewarding. So the main thing I wanted to tell you is be sure that you do read all the lectures in the course as well as the assigned pages, because obviously I'm not going to cover everything in this little video here. I'll just touch on a few things. And the lectures give you the terminology that you'll need, and that's an important part of learning to interpret poetry, is to understand what are figures of speech, what is imagery, and that, by the end of the 2 weeks, hopefully you'll be very comfortable with that. So one of the first lectures you have is what is poetry, and it talks about how it's changed over time, over the years. It's easy to recognize a Shakespearean sonnet as poetry. It fits the form, it rhymes, we recognize it as a poem. Some of the more contemporary writers, it can be hard. The line between prose and poetry can blur a little bit more. And we see this in the book Girl, which you did last week as a short story. A lot of people claim that Girl is really more appropriately read as a prose poem. So there's a little subjectivity there as to which, what you think is a poem, what is a poetry, especially in some of the more contemporary pieces we have. So I thought really the best way, though, to deal with this kind of little supplemental lecture here would be to actually spend the time and go through a poem and read it and analyze it, and sort of show you how you can take apart a poem, how you can analyze it. So for this, we're going to do the poem Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold, which is one of the poems that you're assigned for this week, and it is on page 818 of your textbook. So what I'm going to do is in the handout on what is poetry, there's also a little section on how to read a poem. So I'm going to be following that with this, and the first thing is to, of course, read it silently. So if you'd like to go ahead and pause this video and maybe take some time and read the poem to yourself first, then we'll come back and read it out loud. So to begin here, let's go ahead and start with the reading. This is again Dover Beach. Okay. The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full. The moon lies fair upon the straits on the French coast. The light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast. Out in the tranquil bay, come to the window, sweet as the night air. Only from the long line of spray, where the sea meets the moon-blanched land, listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling. At their return up the high strand, begin and cease, and then again begin, with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sounds a thought. Hearing it by this distant northern sea, the sea of faith was once too, at the full and round earth's shore, lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled, but now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar, retreating to that breath of the night wind down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world. Ah, love, let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here, as on a darkling plain, swept and confused, alarms, a struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. Okay, had a few little missed a few words here and there, but we got it mainly, I think. Okay, so here we go. Now, how would you begin interpreting this? Okay, some people might want to go for the meaning first. Some people might want to go more for the technical aspects first. You're going to want to do both. And in this case, the way I generally do it is I usually go through and look at more technical aspects first. So that's how I'm going to do it on this one. So the first thing that you want to look at when you read a poem is the title. What does the title say? Is it significant? In this case, the title basically gives you a place. It's Dover Beach, which is a beach in southeastern England, which at the time Matthew Arnold was there. I believe he was visiting with his wife at that time. So that would be, what you have in the title. Sometimes you're going to find titles that are really almost like you can't understand the poem without the title. So, okay. This one, so now I'm going to go through and look at some of the figures of speech, some of the poetic techniques. I think I tried to stick mostly with ones that are in Unit 2, but it's very likely that I may have slipped over into Unit 3, but either way, these should all be concepts that you'll be getting by the end of the 2 weeks. So the first one, and again, before I start, let me mention I'm going to be picking out a few. If you're doing this, I'm sure there are things I'm going to miss, that if you were doing it, you might choose different lines, you might choose different images, and that's okay. With a poem of this length, you don't have to pick out every single thing. So we have the title. The other thing I would look at is the point of view. Who is the speaker? Who's the narrator? In this case, I'm going to say I'm going to call the narrator a he. And it's clear that he is speaking to someone because of the line, "Ah, love, let us be true," and then earlier there was the one, "Come to the window." So it is a narrator, but he seems to be speaking to another person. So the other thing I would look at then is the structure and rhyme. And if you look at this is 4 stanzas. They're of uneven length. A stanza is the group of words, and then there's a space between them. That makes a stanza. So you have 4. Again, first one is 14 lines, and you have 6, 8, 9. And it's kind of an unusual rhyme pattern. What I did, on this is I actually go through and label, A, B, A, so on, to see what the rhyming pattern is. And this is a really helpful thing because then it's, laid out. Sometimes you might read a poem and you think, oh, there's no rhyme here at all. And then when you do it, you realize, oh, there is, but it's kind of not where you might normally think a rhyme would be. So I would sort of, you said, make note of that. The structure and rhyme. Then we'll look at a couple of other, little things here. Okay, look at line 2. The tide is full, the moon lies fair. The word tide and lies are what is called assonance, and actually I think that may be in Unit 3. But assonance is when you have 2 internal vowels that sound similar. In this case, tide and lies. You have the I vowel. And what that does is that kind of creates an internal rhyme. So that would be something you would look at. Are there other examples of assonance in the poem? How does this add to the effect? Consonance, which is the other thing, is the repetition of consonant sounds. For instance, pitter-patter would be one. The T sound, not the P sounds would be called alliteration. The T, the internal, would be consonants. So, and speaking of alliteration, on the line on the top of page 819, where it has "Gleams and is gone, the cliffs of England stand," I would say absolutely "gleaming" and "gone" are examples of alliteration, but I would also throw cliffs in there, because alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning of a word. And, the C in cliffs and the G in gleams, they're close enough that to me it sounds, I would call it alliteration, but could probably go either way on that. Okay, so there's a couple. Then let's say go down to the third stanza here. Here is another example. In here you have examples of both metaphor and simile. Metaphor and simile are both comparing unlike objects, but simile will use like or as, whereas metaphor generally doesn't. And metaphor also can be sort of a bigger picture too. Like there can be a central metaphor that runs through a poem or a story. And we have a little bit of this, which I'll get to. So first, the simile. At the beginning we have, the sea of faith was once too at the full and round earth's shore, lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. Okay, there's a simile. It lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. So there, good example of simile. And we also have metaphor in this, the sea of faith. Okay, that's a metaphor. What is the sea of faith? What is it talking about? What is it a metaphor for? And we'll come back to that when we talk about the poem as a whole. Okay, so what are some other things that I would look at? Go up to where it has Sophocles long ago, heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. Okay, so you would want to know, who is Sophocles? Why is he mentioned here? And you would also want to know what the Aegean is. If you're not, probably most of you have heard of the Aegean Sea, but if for some reason you haven't, that would be something you would want to look up also. Sophocles was a Greek playwright who wrote tragedies, and we will be coming across him at the end of this class when we read Oedipus, which was written by Sophocles. So yeah, whenever you have something that is unknown, a word that you don't know, or a reference to someone or something that you don't know, look it up. And so for me, when I see, okay, he's talking about a Greek playwright who is known for writing tragedies, and so I would assume that this kind of adds to the overall feel of the poem, which is, and now, like I said, I'd like to talk about the bigger picture of the poem. What does it mean? What's the overall tone of it? So, in that case, you would want to go through it again. Another thing that I think is a really good suggestion is it's a time to free write. Just take out a pen or use your computer, write whatever comes to mind. If it's just words, images, that's fine. When I did it, I wrote melancholy, human condition, what does faith mean? I had a lot of, I had questions and such like that, and so that helped me when I went back to look at the meaning of it. And I think this poem, I really think it's not a real difficult poem to understand. It is what you would say philosophical. To me, I feel that he's talking about the ebb and flow of life, the human condition, the dualities that we all have to face. And the sea of faith, I consider to be the idea of faith as whole. That how that is, what is this faith? It was once here too at the full tide, full and round earth's shore. And then he says, but now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawing roar. Okay, retreating to the breath. So what does that mean? The idea of faith, that he, is he losing faith? Now when he looks at it, it's something he sees retreating, something melancholy, and a withdrawing roar. That's something, pulling back. So I would, that would be something that you would spend some time on. What is is this a conflict of faith? What is he talking about here? And then, of course, the last line, the last stanza, for me, what I hear is he's saying, let us be true to each other because the world is a hard place. The world will sort of batter you, and it's not always good. It's not always honest. So you want to hold on to what you have, which is is true and good. Um, I would say in style, this poem could be considered both an elegy and a monologue. Um, so those are terms too that you can look up that we talk about in the lecture. So, so those are kind of just, like I said, I gave you kind of just a few little things to look at here. What are some other ones that I have on here? A little bit on tone on this first. I like this on the very first stanza where you have it ends with tremulance, cadence, slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. So when that first stanza ends kind of on a note of sadness, it's almost like a kind of foreshadowing that we talk about in fiction. It's sort of, it kind of sets the tone. This is sort of a melancholy tone. I don't find it depressing or sad. I find it kind of reflective. Um, but anyway, so these are kind of just general ideas that I have on it. And, of course, if you were going to do a paper on it, you would go a lot further. If you go now in this class, you're not expected to look up outside sources, but you're certainly welcome to. The one thing I just, since I have your attention here, I want to really caution you. When you look up other people's interpretations, to remember they're interpretations, and they're not necessarily more valid than yours just because they got theirs on the internet and you don't. So, feel free, any of these poems you can Google and you can find write-ups and analysis of them. And, I'm not going to say don't do it because I would probably do it if I was, if I was in school, but try to do it with a little bit of an open mind and do it just as a way to kind of give yourself ideas, but as certainly don't take other people's ideas. And we talk about plagiarism in here, and it's a big thing, so I'm kind of bringing it up again. But if you do, like I said, read other some of the other analyses of it, just take it, use it as information, but don't necessarily feel that it's this is the gospel truth. What I'm interested in is your interpretations, your ideas. And I hope that you feel less afraid because usually I find students have a lot more insight than they give themselves credit for. And I see it on the discussion boards all the time. Somebody will say, I can't interpret this. I don't know what it means. I'm not, I'm no good at this. And then they'll go on to have these incredible insights and, posts about the poem and their ideas. So, that's, I guess, the main thing is to just, to go ahead and learn to trust yourself and, just give it a go. Don't be afraid, and don't be afraid of being wrong. Sometimes we get things wrong, and that's absolutely okay too. Just like I said, just when I say wrong, I should say sometimes if your interpretation is very different from somebody else's in the class, don't automatically think that you got it wrong and they got it right, because it could be just different. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and close now. I hope this helps. I hope it gives you some, idea of, some different ways you can look at poetry and some of the things that you can look at in it. Again, feel free to contact me with any questions, email, phone call. I do my best to get back as quickly as I can. And I guess that's all for right now. Go ahead and close this, and again, have a good class and enjoy your reading of poetry this month.